Today on Locked On Canadians, it is the Friday mailbag. We talk about Florian Xhekaj's near future. We talk about Vinny Rohrer making a lot of waves, and we've got tons more questions, including could the Habs finish in the top three in the division this year? That's all coming up on Locked On Canadians.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadians. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. And I'm not joined today by my wonderful co-host Ian Boisvert. He will be back at some point next week. We're not sure when, but I promise you he will be back. We have not kicked him off the show, and he's very, very bummed to be missing this exciting lead up to a season we've all been waiting for, and he's bummed to be missing the podcast. But all of that said, today is our Friday mailbag. You guys came through with a lot of questions in our first couple of segments. We're going to talk about your questions, namely, can the Habs finish in the top three in the division this year? What about Vinzenz Rohrer? He made a great impression in camp. And later on in the episode, in our final segment, I've been promising this for a while. We've had a number of listeners, most recently Seamus, ask us about what to do when you come to Montreal. Where should I go eat? So I've prepared a list, and that's going to be our final segment. And I will be showing the names as well. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'll show the names so that you can kind of write that down as well. So that's coming up in our last segment. That is a frequently asked mailbag question. I believe our good friend Danny Joe had asked it in the past as well. So I just want to make sure, if you ever have this situation where you're coming to Montreal for a game, what do? You pull up that episode, or you can refer your friends to this episode and go to the third segment, and you'll have all the information you need. All right, let's get started with our first mailbag question, which isn't even really a question. It was more of an observation, but I did want to bring it up. And this comes from good friend of the show, Claude Sauvé. Hi, guys. Just a thought on Monday's episode regarding camp takeaways. The prospect I was most impressed with was Vinzenz Rohrer. Some players have to make a conscious effort to add a physical component to their game. Rohrer comes by it naturally. He relishes it. I may have imagined it, but I swear I saw a smile on his face when he was finishing one of his many checks. He strikes me as a poop disturber in the best way. He seemed to be involved on every shift. His mindset epitomizes the kind of player you need on your bottom six. He may not be a point-per-game player, but he affects the game in other ways, in the ways that you win championships. So I love when Claude emails us. Most of the time he sends us questions that make us think a lot. But I also really like this observation, because I do feel that, we did kind of mention Vinzenz Rohrer. We did kind of mention he was making waves. But I don't know if we spent enough time emphasizing on how glad we are that there's a guy like this in the organization, right? As the core solidifies itself, as you know who your top six and your stars are going to be, who's going to rotate out is those third and fourth line players. And having him in your back pocket a couple of years from now, maybe there's a spot you need to fill. And I really do think that he relishes playing hockey, right? Like, he loves playing hockey. We saw when he was in Ottawa, there were a couple of injuries and things like that. He was playing with the 67s. I cannot, I didn't want anyone to think I was accusing him of being an Ottawa Senator, especially in today's climate. But he had a couple of injuries because he plays so hard. He plays so physical. And he reminds me very much of a guy like Brendan Gallagher, getting involved in everything, never taking a shift off. And I really like that guy. And I just really love that he's in the pipeline. Now, is it likely that he makes the team? I don't know. But if anyone's going to make the team out of determination and hard work, I think for me, the bet is on Vinzenz Rohrer. All right. And thank you, Claude, for your email. We love that. And now we have an email from somebody we hadn't heard from in the past. We hadn't heard from yet. So this comes from listener Yassine, first email, who lives abroad and doesn't have many opportunities to talk hockey, and we are his hockey friends. And that I really love that. That really warms my heart because Ian and I, and before Ian, Scott and I always really wanted the show to feel like you guys were sitting around a table, having a beverage maybe or some snacks and talking about hockey. So as long as you feel that way, that makes me really, really happy. So Yassine's question is, not sure if you've done this before, but the Habs are reenacting the Ted Lasso story arc with a few tweaks. Right? Marty's obviously the coach with no experience in strange expressions and sayings. Savard is Roy Kent, the veteran with a championship that has retired and will be assistant coach in 6 months. Caulfield is Danny Rojas, the happy goal scorer. Liney is Jamie Tart, question mark. Coach is trying to get a world-class talent to buy into the team concept. And then Montembeault is Zorro, the keeper from Quebec. And then the question is, who else matches characters from the show? If the story arc continues, will the Habs finish runner-up this year? Will they end up playing total hockey, positionless hockey, in other words? And which player is having a secret affair with the club owner? And then question mark, too spicy for the pod. So while it's not spicy for the pod, I do think that that question is a tricky one. So first of all, like David Savard, I think like the Roy Kent quality is the like not being able to let go, coming back as a coach, right? Veteran with a championship in the past, but Roy Kent is very grumpy. Um, Roy Kent has like a little bit of an edge to him, so I feel like Roy Kent, you would have to combine uh, Brendan Gallagher and David Savard to get Roy Kent, in my mind. I do agree that Caulfield is Danny Rojas, who's a happy goal scorer, but there's a contender as well in Ivan Demidov because he's also extremely happy. And then Tart is difficult because Tart has an attitude problem, and I feel like nobody on this team does have an attitude problem. And we know why, like Tart's background, et cetera, et cetera. Does work out in the end. It is, it is TV after all. So I wouldn't I don't know if I would compare Liney specifically to that, but I do agree that the coach reaches him in a way, and there is a mental health aspect and him getting over that mental health aspect and being part of a team. But I think like the biggest difference with Liney is that he wanted to be part of a team. He wanted to be a team player, and by all accounts, he came in with a really positive team mentality. So, there is a very famous scene in the show, where Tart kind of does an about face, and he says something like, "We're a team, ain't we?" So I feel like maybe Liney is post that Tart. He's not the Tart with the problems before. All right, and then if the story arc continues, will the Habs finish runner-up this year? If the story arc continues, the Habs will win a playoff round or possibly more, but they won't win the championship because if the story arc is supposed to continue, season 3 is when they win the championship. Now, the player having a secret affair with the club owner, I don't think there is anyone like that. But if we look at the player in question in the show, like it's somebody who's who's a star, who's also very innocent and kind of happy-go-lucky, and like again, somebody who's an up-and-coming star who's starting to get attention, and really is kind of, like I said, innocent, naive, very, very happy. And I think that person would be Liney. Not Liney. I'm so sorry. Not Liney. Why did I say that? Lane Hudson. I think he's that guy because for me, like he's definitely somebody who has like this extreme dedication. He's somebody that everyone had to sit up and take notice of last year, right? He came on the scene, but he's also somebody who's just so good. Like he's just so like he's like a pure precious baby. So that's kind of where my comparison is. What I really like, one of my favorite scenes in Ted Lasso, we're digressing, but one of my favorite scenes in Ted Lasso is the haircut scene. I so very much see Nick Suzuki being the captain who gives the haircuts. There's just something about that scene I just really, really love. And that whole kind of storyline. So anyways, thank you, Yassine, for writing in. I love hearing from listeners who haven't written to us before. Also, as well as, our listeners who are, I'm going to call you veterans. I'm going to call you guys the Roy Kent of the show because we could not live without you, and good friends of the show. All right. So we have a bunch more questions coming up in our next segment, and stay tuned because at the end, in the final segment of the show, I am going to give you my guide to Montreal eats and drinks, so that you can save that, and so that every time somebody asks that as a mailbag question, I can be like, go look at the October 3rd episode, 3rd segment, and check it out. We'll be back in a moment with a really important question could the Habs finish top 3 in the division this year? This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down just $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, I've tried player props, and I've even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, continuing on with the mailbag. And once again, I'm so grateful to all of you guys to providing all of these mailbag questions. We have a question that came from Instagram from Jalen. With Barkov being out for the season confirmed, do you think it changes them making the playoffs? Being out Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk pretty much all season, what team do you see coming up to fight for their spot? I'm sure people's predictions just switched heavily after this news. Does Montreal take a top 3 spot in the division with this news? So let's break that down really quickly. Obviously, if you're not living under a rock, Sasha Barkov is out for the entire season with an injury, and I believe it's an ACL, if I'm not mistaken. And Matthew Tkachuk, as yet undisclosed lower body injury that will have him out until at least December. And when Bill Zito said that, he said, I think December, don't something like I'm not 100% sure, something to do with like he said something about like my internet medical degree. So let's talk about how this affects the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think the Florida Panthers are not making the playoffs. And I'll tell you why. Our special guest Maud brought this up in our last episode where we did a kind of a Sens Habs crossover. Maud said that she thinks that the Atlantic Division is once again going to send 5 teams to the playoffs this year because the Metro Division has not given us anything to be scared of, really. So I will say that out of those 5, I do believe that the Florida Panthers are absolutely going to be one. So the question, could the Panthers miss the playoffs? I do not think so. I really don't. The Habs are more likely to miss the playoffs than the Florida Panthers, but I don't think the Habs are going to miss the playoffs. I think the Florida Panthers don't really care where they finish in the standings because they know that they've got a really strong team, even without Barkov. Barkov's a huge loss, but it doesn't crater or tank their season entirely like it would for some other teams. I think they'll struggle, yes, but like for Florida, struggling means not beating up on all the teams, right? Struggling means like they will come in 4th in the division or maybe get that other wild card spot in the other division, right? So I think I would still 100% believe that Florida will make the playoffs. Now, what does change is that they potentially, like last year, they finished top 3. And they still won the Stanley Cup. They don't really care. Like they don't need to finish first. They don't need home ice advantage. They can just do damage without it. I do think, though, that this opens up a possibility for either Montreal or Ottawa to come in top 3 in the division. I think that I think Toronto is a lock for top 3. Even though they will regress this year, I still think they're a lock for top 3. And I have a hard time counting Tampa out. So it's possible that Tampa finishes 4th and Ottawa and Montreal finish 2 and 3. That's entirely possible. But I do think that, yes, this news absolutely gives the Montreal Canadiens an opportunity, if they seize it, to finish in the top 3 in the division, not have to deal with the wild card spot, not have to play the other teams. But again, this kind of really opens up the possibility into having to play the Ottawa Senators in the playoffs. Not something I relish, not an idea I love, but you know what? Just make the playoffs and we'll see what you can do. I believe in this team. So either way, the answer to your question is don't think the Florida Panthers are missing the playoffs, but I do think that this gives the Canadiens an opportunity, not a guarantee, an opportunity to finish third. All right. We've got a question from Super Rain, but I am going to push this question. I'm going to say what it is. I'm going to give this as homework to our Locked On Canadiens Extended Universe group chat. So you will be getting some messages from us if you are in that extended universe. The mailbag question. We have the Boy Genius line. Can you mix the lines and get 4 lines with nicknames? So this is a question that I'm going to put to the Locked On Canadiens Extended Universe. And then next week, we will have a bunch of answers for you with nicknamed lines. Maybe we'll come to a consensus. We don't know, but we'll get started. So the next question. And then this has to do with a trivia question that we asked earlier this week. Mailbag. Looking up the trivia, so Super Rain was researching our trivia, which was, I believe it featured Sami Kapanen. So the question was, Saku Koivu played the game versus Kapanen. Back to the question, will we ever see Atos Koivu and Oliver Kapanen played together for the Habs? Oh yeah, that was another thing. So I always thought it was Kapanen. That's how we pronounce the other guys' names, but Oliver apparently would prefer to be called Kapanen. So that's how we're going to pronounce it. He told the media, I think it was Arpon Basu that talked about it. So that's how we're going to pronounce it from now on. So is there a chance we see Atos and Oliver Kapanen play together for the Habs? I would say that it's possible, but as of yet, we haven't seen from Atos Koivu anything that guarantees that he's going to make the NHL. If you in our preseason or leading up to the season, I had a conversation with Patrick Bexell about Atos Koivu, and right now it's I think too early to call. Like he's not guaranteed himself an opportunity in the NHL, and not with the Habs. But I do think it's possible, and I also really, really want it to happen. I really, really want to see another Koivu on the Montreal Canadiens when they're good, and something we can all enjoy together. All right. Real quick, a couple of other questions from Super 8 again. Can you make the trivia a league for the whole of the regular season and crown the President's Trophy winner of trivia? Ian and I are going to talk about this because obviously it's a little bit difficult to do it this way because, some people can look up the answer. Some people know it off the top of their heads, but we can find a way to make trivia something fun and something to track for the whole of the regular season. And we'll get back to you on that one. And then another question from Super Rain. If Kirby gets hurt, is it a possibility that Kapanen gets that spot? And will we have a 90s line like in the preseason game? So we saw a lot from Kapanen in that game against the Ottawa Senators. He, changing the lines in that way really kind of opened it up. And I know we made a big deal about separating Dach from Line and making that work and how that worked really well. But Kapanen was able to play with Demidov and Newhook. They had that opportunity, did really well in that spot. So I think it's possible. There's there's a bunch of players with 90. I'm thinking about a way to kind of put Veleno on either a power play or something like that, or make him play defense and have 90, 91, 92, 90, 93. But I don't know. I don't know necessarily. I think if Dach does get injured, yes, he has the inside track on that spot. But I don't really know if the lines are solidified just yet. Like we were talking about in our group chat this morning, there's a lot of extra guys still on the roster still, so we don't really know what the regular season is going to look like. But thank you, Super Rain, for all your questions. We'll get back to you on the nickname line because I want to make a little chart with all of our ideas. All right. A couple more questions before we move on to our third segment. John C. asks, should Florian and Xhekaj stay with the big club or go for one more season in Laval and be one of the first call-ups if or when he's needed? I think that's exactly what's going to happen. He's going to get sent to Laval to primarily play in Laval this season because from what we've seen from Kapanen, he has really given himself the biggest opportunity to be the guy, that spot that they're competing for. So I do think that we see Beck sent back down, we see Florian sent back down, and they both are at the top of the list for call-ups. I think they keep Joe Veleno. I think they keep Oliver Kapanen. So I think, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. I want to see Florian Xhekaj on the NHL team. I don't want to see him too early, or if he's going to be here and not be used, whereas he can be so useful in Laval. I think he's also the kind of person who would understand, right? Like he would understand that he's got to wait his chance, and there will be a chance, right? There's some contracts coming off the Montreal Canadiens next year. So he'll have an opportunity. And then friend of the show, Anthony on Blue Sky asks us, shouldn't your co-host, maybe it's Ian, have graduated to pretty sure it's Ian by now? The uncertainty doesn't inspire confidence. So that is another question for my co-host, who I am 100% sure is Ian. He'll be back at some point next week. He's got a lot of crazy work deadlines. That's the only reason he's not here. Everything's fine. He's okay. He just can't be with us right now. But he will be back, and he's really, really, really hoping to be there for the season opener and that the preview for the season opener as well. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Up next, we've got my guide to things to eat and drink in Montreal if you are coming into town for a game. That's all next. All right. So a number of people have sent us this mailbag question. I'm going to be in Montreal. My friend's going to be in Montreal. We're going to watch a hockey game. What do I do? What do I see? What do I eat and drink? And the first thing I will say also is that we had a listener question a couple of weeks ago about a listener who was going to Winnipeg to watch a Habs game and had the same question. What do I do, see, and eat in Winnipeg to see the Habs game when I'm there? So please, I know we have listeners in Winnipeg. Please send us emails to tell us what we should tell our lovely listener who's going to Winnipeg for a Habs game, what to eat, what to drink, what to do, what not to do. All right. Let's get into Montreal. So Montreal is the type of city where there is a lot, like you'll see that most of what I talk about is eating and drinking, because Montreal is the kind of city where like there's not really like an Eiffel Tower or anything like that. The big touristy things are the Botanical Garden, the biodome. I think the biosphere is still closed. And then for the most part, the rest of the stuff is Montreal is just a city to walk around in. There are very many beautiful neighborhoods. In the summer, if you come, there's a bunch of festivals, but clearly the Canadiens will not be playing while those festivals are on. The hockey season is out at that time. Things to do in Montreal. Really just fall in love with some neighborhoods. A lot of people go to the Old Port, but you really want to also go to Mile End. You want to go to Verdun. Verdun is such a cool place to hang out. St. Henry, the Plateau, downtown Montreal is like kind of not where it's at really anymore, except for if you're there for a Habs game. So if the weather allows it, like definitely go out and explore neighborhoods. We've got some beautiful places, beautiful parks and things like that. So when you ask me like what do you do in Montreal, like my friends and I we'll spend time going to parks, we'll spend time hanging around neighborhoods and walking around and maybe going for an ice cream somewhere or going to Atwater Market and things like that. So it's really like the kind of city where you just fall in love with the genre. There's a lot of like when I travel, that's mostly what I do. Not to say there aren't touristy things here to do. I do think that if you are a Habs fan, you should go to the Bell Center tour. Just once in your life. I did it, and I with a friend a long time ago, and I really, really enjoyed it because you see parts of the arena that you maybe won't get to see if you would go just for the game. And so I think that's really, and you learn some facts and things like that. So definitely do that if you're a Habs fan. But what I can give you tips on is eating and drinking. So some of these recommendations are in the general vicinity of the Bell Center. Some of these recommendations require a trek. And I'm going to put the names at the bottom of the screen for each one. So I'm going to start with coffee. Near the Bell Center, there's a milk bar. This place has a couple of locations in Montreal. That's my go-to place for coffee when I'm downtown. It is one of my favorite places. I don't really drink that much coffee anymore, but I do like to indulge once in a while. Milk bar is one of them. Also downtown, you'll find a couple of locations of Tunnel Espresso. Also, a place that I would recommend. It's got good coffee. A place that a lot of people recommend is Cafe Olimpico. It's definitely like it's more to the Italian style. You can get an affogato there. And I will go there occasionally, but really my go-tos are Milk Bar and downtown and Tunnel Espresso. If you are not downtown, if you are in the Plateau area, L'Or en Grain is my favorite coffee place in all of Montreal. You can walk in there and be like, I like this kind of note, this kind of bean, this kind of, this kind of origin, and they will find you something. Love that. Moving on from coffee, there is one place where like I will get bubble tea all the time. It's a Taiwanese place. It's called No Tea. It's also downtown. Like if if I find myself really thirsty, like they have this yuzu lemonade with aloe in it, one of my favorite drinks in Montreal. And then let's go to bagels, which are really important. Downtown, Fabrique de Bagel de Montréal. Also, a couple of locations. I would not get any other bagel downtown. There's one across the street from the Bell Center. I don't know what it's called. I don't remember. I don't care because Fabrique de Bagel is where it's at. This is where you're getting your bagels. If you have time to go to the plateau, the two places that you're going to hear about are Fairmount Bagel and Saint Viateur Bagel. The Quebec Civil War is which one of these is the better place. I'm a Fairmount girl. Most people say Saint Viateur. Personally, Fairmount is my favorite. Let's talk about poutine. You have heard my former co-host and potentially my current co-host talk about this place, Ma Poule Mouillée. This is actually a Portuguese chicken place, but they have a Portuguese chicken chorizo poutine that is to die for. There will be people queuing up round the block for this place. Also, across the street from this is I think it's on Rachel. Across the street is La Banquise. La Banquise is the one that you always hear about, and then people will tell you, oh, it's too touristy, it's gimmicky, all of that. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Ma Poule Mouillée is my favorite place, but La Banquise will hit the spot. Do you know why? They've got like, I don't know, I think 70 kinds of poutine. So anything that tickles your fancy, they've got a poutine for it. Don't knock the staples. Is it the best poutine in Montreal? No. Is it the most versatile? I will say yes, if it's the biggest crowd pleaser. Let's talk about smoked meat. Downtown, you've got Reuben's. There's two Reuben's. You want to go to the nice one. I love their Reuben sandwich. One of my favorites. It is a bit more expensive than you traditionally expect a smoked meat sandwich to be. The place is a sit-down restaurant. It's the fancy one. It's the nice one. They've got a couple of other things. I have loved their salads too. Definitely a place you can go before a Habs game where there'll be a lot of things that people will like if they're not specifically smoked meat. Also downtown, there is a Dunn's. This is more of your old traditional diner style smoked meat place. But again, it'll do the trick if you're looking for it. If you have time to go again to the Plateau Milandish area on Saint Laurent, Schwartz's. This is the one you always hear about. Again, people will be like, oh, it's touristy. There are better places in Montreal. You know what? This is the original. This is the staple, and I still love it. I've lived in Montreal lots of years. I've had some of the best smoked meat. Schwartz's will still hit the spot. All right, let's talk about dining. So a couple of the places I'm going to give you are in the kind of the Sud-West area, but I think are worth it and aren't excessively expensive. McKiernan is one of them. I always recommend people go to McKiernan if they are in town. And nobody has ever complained. They've all been happy with this recommendation. Satay Brothers, if you are in the St. Henry area, this is like, I call them chaotically delicious. Great place for a meal. So good. One of my favorites. And then I don't know how to pronounce this one. I think it's Razoy. I don't know if it's Razois because obviously we speak French here. It is an Indian restaurant. Again, very close to Satay Brothers. It is my favorite. It's a little bit pricier than you expect Indian food to be, but it is one of my favorite Indian restaurants in Montreal. And they have this pain perdu, this creme brulee that is so good. They have like a cardamom orange creme brulee. Definitely worth it. All right, back to downtown. If you're around the downtown area, and you want somewhere to go that's not going to break the bank, but is still going to be delicious, I've got a couple of crowd pleasers. Sammy soup and dumplings. Soup dumplings, not too pricey. Crowd pleaser near the Bell Center. If you like soup dumplings, check them out. Il Focolaio is crowd pleaser for pizza. It is also within walking distance of the Bell Center. It's one of the most, I think, that's somewhere where everybody will find something they like. And funnily enough, it is a pizza place, but I will go and I'll have their salad because their salad is also incredible. If you like Szechuan food, Canbay is just up the street from the Bell Center. It is delicious. I can't say enough. If you're looking for Lebanese food downtown, Garage Beirut, that's, again, all these places I just mentioned, Sammy Soup and Dumplings, Il Focolaio, Canbay, and Garage Beirut will not break the bank. They're close to the Bell Center. They're within walking distance, and they are delicious. Like, I can vouch for the food. All right. If you want to go to a brunch place nearby, there's a Persian brunch place called Cafe Anja. And it is delicious. It's incredible. That's a place that I have often gone with friends before an afternoon Habs game. So Cafe Anja is definitely one of the things for brunch. And then kind of towards at the beginning of the Old Port, you have Le Quartier. So you can walk here from the Bell Center, but it's just a little bit of a walk. This is like a fancier brunch. Definitely if you're there with maybe your partner and you're trying to impress them, Le Quartier is a place that is a good crowd pleaser. So I'm going to give you a couple of dessert places as well. Ocha has mochi donuts, and they have boba. and it's close to the Bell Center. Very, 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 very delicious. Favorite in Montreal. If you have time for a trek, you can go to Queen Amman. Like if you like buttery pastry, they've obviously got a Queen Amman, but they've also got other things. Buttery, flaky pastry, if that's your jam. Extremely decadent, really delicious. Can't miss it. And then gluten-free option is Le Marquis. Le Marquis is a boulangerie pâtisserie that has gluten-free option that is entirely gluten-free. So if you need that, Le Marquis is your place. They've got various locations in Montreal. The next three places I'm going to give you are fancy food halls. Time Out Montreal has a bunch of stuff. Le Cathcart has a bunch of stuff. Le Central is another one. These all three are fancy food halls. So think elevated food court. Think you're going to pay a little bit more. But if maybe you're here in a group and you can't really decide, or if people can't decide what they want, maybe you can go there. Everybody gets what they want from their respective outlets, and you get together, sit down, and have a really delicious meal. Most of the restaurants, like featured in these food halls, are also like they're offshoots of really famous Montreal food places, Montreal chefs or whatever. So you're definitely going to find something you like. But again, be prepared to pay a little bit more than those other downtown options I gave you. Now, if you have time to wander a little bit, the next four restaurants I'm going to give you are restaurants where I've recently been, maybe let's say for a birthday or like with a friend I haven't seen in a long time, or a friend coming in from out of town. Again, a little bit pricier, but they won't kill you, especially if you are careful about what you drink when you go to the restaurants. But the next four places are places that I've been very recently and have been like, yes, I remember this is one of, this is one of the good places to go, or like, this is a really good meal that I remember having in recent months. The first one is Oncle Lee at the Laurier location. So there's a location on Rue McGill as well, but you want to go to the Laurier location for Oncle Lee. Incredible meal. Like I walked out of the restaurant thinking, you know what? It's been a while since I've had a meal where every part of it hit. The dessert, everything. Order anything on the menu and make sure you get the pain perdu for Oncle Lee. It is incredible. The next one is Candide, which does tasting menus and wine pairings. If you opt to go without a wine pairing, it's not that expensive. And you can kind of tell them if you're allergic to an ingredient, or if you need an ingredient avoided, and they'll make you a 5 to 7 course tasting menu. Really, really delicious. An Ethiopian place is called Nil Bleu, Blue Nile. Again, this is like kind of plateauish area, I think. And it is so good. Like it is, it hits. It's got all the spice. It's very authentic and really, really, really delicious. Like it's, again, I walked out of there recently. It was with my family, and I was like, I'm really glad we came here. I hadn't been here in a while, and it like I just remembered how this is a meal that like will hit on all fronts. And finally, if you have time to go kind of to the East End in Quartier Angus, there's Hugon et Beaufort. And I just realized I didn't put those names up. So Oncle Lee, Candide, Nil Bleu or Blue Nile, and then Hugon et Beaufort. Like this is the latest one. It's in Quartier Angus. It's a little bit to the east. It's not excessively far, but you need time to do. You can't like squeeze it in, right? You got to make a reservation and really plan to spend the evening there. That is also one of my favorite places. Slightly pricey. It's a nice dinner. You're going with your spouse or special occasion. That's one of my go-to places. I'm going to give you guys a couple of vegan options as well for anyone who is vegan. Lola Rosa at Quartier des Spectacles is like a pretty basic option. You'll find a lot of stuff there, and most of the stuff is pretty decent. If you've got any egg allergies or dairy allergies, you could go with Lola Rosa. Slightly more expensive is Love, Lov, in the Old Port. They've only got one location left. They used to have a bunch of them. This is one of my favorite places to go, again, when I'm trying to like splurge a little, but not completely break the bank, and it's completely vegan. So if you have people who are vegan or have dietary issues with you, that's definitely an option. Finally, Xhekaj is also completely plant-based. It is a Thai place. It's close to Blue Nile, actually. And then close to that is also Sushi Momo. Again, completely plant-based. It is sushi. It is delicious. Finally, we're going to talk about some pubs and bars. If you are headed to the game or after the game, if you want to go to a pub nearby, here are the staples. I'm going to give you 4 bars, and all 4 bars are staples. And also, you do stand a chance of running into like Marty or Jeff Gorton or, maybe a player, occasionally, rarely a player, but more likely to see like, a scout or somebody from the front office. One is McLean's Pub. One is Hurley's Pub. One is Yield Orchard. Careful, there's a bunch of locations. You want to go to the one that's up the street from the Bell Center. And Ziggy's Pub on Crescent. These are all places that you are not always. I don't guarantee this, so be careful. You could run into them, but also these are places where people go after the game, drinks, food, etc. And then finally, I'm going to give you 3 bars. One of them is called Xhekaj. This is the closest one from the bars that I'm going to give you. It's not a speakeasy, but it kind of has a speakeasy decor and a speakeasy feel. It is my favorite cocktail bar in Montreal. I really enjoy the atmosphere. It feels like it's kind of homey, like people recognize you and all of that. So Xhekaj is definitely a place to go for a cocktail after the game. Cold Room is in the Old Port. Definitely love them. I like honestly, like consistently one of the top mentioned as one of the top bars in Montreal. One thing that always impresses me with Cold Room is the service is always impeccable. And then finally, Le Mal Nécessaire, also like in the Old Port ish. That is an underrated bar that does not get a lot of. It doesn't come up in these lists all the time, but is one of the best bars in Montreal. You'll also hear a place called Cloakroom. It's not on my list. Why? Because I feel like there's too much going on when I just want a cocktail. It is just like this place, like it's a cloakroom. It's like the decor has like curtains and stuff like that. And then, like the idea is like you don't ask for a drink, you tell them what kinds of things you like. And then they craft a drink for you. And I feel like that's just a lot. I just want to go in and order a cocktail. But cloakroom is one that is popular with people, so I will allow it. All right, this is my list of all the things to do around Montreal. Again, it's by no means complete. It's by no means extensive. This is just a bunch of stuff to get you started. If you come to Montreal, these places will not disappoint you. That is all I'll say. All right. I want to thank everyone for bearing with me through that. I tried to get through it in 8 minutes. Did not happen. I think it took me twice that long. But in the meantime, this is the end of our mailbag episode. We will be back on Monday. Please make sure you are subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If you'd like to send us more mailbag questions, you can send us emails to lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. You can also contact us on Blue Sky, on Instagram, and on TikTok. We are Locked On Canadians, all of those places. My co-host Ian should be back at some point next week. We're not super sure again. It's work deadlines. Everything is fine. He just he was not able to make this recording or the last recording. I'm really hoping to have him back for Monday to pick his brain, but I'm also just for his sake, I'm hoping that he's back for he's able to be back to watch that season opener on Wednesday. And we're going to be with you guys throughout the entire season. So make sure you tell your friends, tell everybody to listen to this podcast. The more listeners we get, the more likely it is we get to stick around. And please feel free to contact us. We love hearing from you. You'll find my co-host on social media at maybe it's Ian. I kind of forgot. We had a mailbag question about it. I completely forgot. And you'll find me at The Active Stick. I want to thank you all so much for listening. And I will see you for sure on Monday. And hopefully Ian will too. Thanks, everybody.